Alea Henderson was just 16 when her physics teacher tried to humiliate her in front of the whole class, daring her to explain Schrödinger's cat, expecting her to stumble. But when she answered flawlessly, something in his face changed. What started as a smirk turned into a silent war of sabotage, gaslighting, and academic traps. She didn't just survive it, she exposed the entire school system. But before her truth could go viral, the district launched a secret campaign to erase her brilliance. What came next, no one was ready for. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. In a school where no one expected brilliance from a black girl, her presence alone was an act of defiance. The halls of Woodsville High buzzed with the chaos of a new semester, lockers slamming, sneakers skidding on polished tile, and the chorus of teenage voices filling the corridors. It was a Tuesday in early September, and while most students moved with the aimless energy of routine, one girl walked with silent precision. Alea Henderson, 16, stepped through the crowd like she'd been there before. She hadn't, but her shoulders were squared, her pace deliberate. A navy blue hoodie hugged her frame, sleeves rolled neatly at the wrists. Her notebook was pressed tightly to her side, its edges fraying from obsessive use. She didn't wear jewelry or makeup, but her posture carried a gravity that turned heads, though not always in welcome. She had transferred from a magnet school in West Harris County, where academic excellence was expected but not always nurtured, especially not in students who looked like her. Alea knew what she was walking into. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. Don't let their silence fool you. They'll talk. Just make sure they're talking about how smart you are. Room 203. Advanced Physics. Her first real test. She stepped in. The fluorescent lights above flickered once before holding steady. Desks were arranged in semicircles, facing the whiteboard and the teacher's station. Posters of Newton, Einstein, and Feynman lined the walls. No sign of Mae Jemison or George Washington Carver. Alea chose a seat in the center row, directly aligned with the board. Not too forward, not invisible. The murmurs stopped. She caught it. The half-second hesitation in the classroom's atmosphere. The subtle shift when something unfamiliar enters a space people think they own. Some students exchanged glances. One girl glanced at Alea's shoes, then quickly looked away. 3 minutes later, the door swung open. Mr. Calhoun walked in like he owned the air. Lab coat crisp, collar stiff, clipboard in one hand, and coffee in the other. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly parted, and his steel-rimmed glasses gave him the air of a man who believed intellect was inherited, not earned. He surveyed the room. Then he saw her. You must be the transfer, he said flatly. Alea didn't flinch. Alea Henderson. He gave a single nod. No smile. No welcome. He turned to the board and clicked his marker open with a sharp snap. This is advanced physics. We don't hold hands here. We move quickly, and we expect mastery. If you're not comfortable solving vector fields or derivative chains in your sleep, you're already behind. Some students chuckled. Calhoun chuckled louder. Alea sat still, her eyes locked on the board. I'll be calling on students randomly. Starting now, Calhoun continued, scanning the room with performative menace. Let's see who's already behind. His eyes stopped on her. Henderson. A few heads turned. One boy bit his lip. Mr. Calhoun smiled, not warmly. What's Schrödinger's cat? Alea lifted her gaze, steady as a beam. A quantum mechanics thought experiment, she said calmly. It illustrates the concept of superposition. Until an observation is made, the cat inside the box is simultaneously alive and dead. The room went silent. Calhoun blinked. Well then, he muttered, turning to the board. Maybe we'll start with thermodynamics instead. A few smirks circled the room, but no one laughed. Alea picked up her pen, jotting notes as Calhoun began writing equations. But something had shifted. The silence had a different weight now, the kind that comes before a storm. 2 students glanced at her when they thought she wasn't looking. Mr. Calhoun's voice was the same, but his tone had changed. Colder, shorter, clipped at the edges. She was no longer invisible. After class, she lingered. Most students filed out quickly. Alea took her time packing her bag. She knew he was watching. She didn't give him the satisfaction of rushing. She stepped into the hallway. The next bell hadn't rung yet, but the corridor was already alive again. As she moved through the crowd, she felt it, the weight of attention. Curious, skeptical, quiet. She reached her locker. A note had been slipped inside. Scrawled in red pen, it read, "Try not to act so smart. No one likes a show-off." She read it twice, folded it silently, and placed it inside the back pocket of her notebook, beside her equations. She didn't look back, but she knew something had begun. A battle she hadn't started, but one she was now forced to finish. What begins with a smirk soon spirals into a pattern of intentional humiliation. The second day of class came without warning. The morning announcements hadn't even finished echoing through the intercom when Alea slid into her seat in room 2030. Exactly 2 minutes early. She placed her notebook down, opened to a fresh page, and waited. Her breathing was steady, her pencil already sharpened, but Mr. Calhoun didn't acknowledge her. He didn't even look in her direction. "Can anyone tell me how entropy relates to the second law of thermodynamics?" he asked. Alea's hand went up. Immediately. Calm, confident. He looked straight past her. "Ethan?" Ethan, a sandy-haired junior in the back row, fumbled through half a sentence about disorder and energy before giving up with a shrug. Calhoun gave a dry smile. "Close enough. We'll refine it later." Alea slowly lowered her hand. No reaction on her face, but inside, something curled tightly in her chest. She turned to a blank page and wrote the exact answer she'd been prepared to give, word for word. Then she drew a line under it and dated the page. It was the first entry. The notebook would stay in her backpack, zipped and hidden, its pages slowly filling with moments no one else seemed to notice or admit. When a group project was assigned that afternoon, Calhoun split the class into pairs. Every student had a partner by the time he reached Alea. He said, scanning the room. "Looks like we've got an extra. Henderson, why don't you work on the foundational worksheet alone for now?" Alea didn't argue. She never did. But she felt the shift. She caught the glance between two girls in the front row, the little smirk one of them gave before turning away. It happened again the next day, and the next. Each time she raised her hand to answer a question, he'd overlook her. When she solved a problem on the board with elegant precision, he'd stare at it in silence, then pivot to someone else, "Who can show us a different approach?" If her work was flawless, he'd call it technically correct. If others got partial credit for broken logic, they earned affirming nods, and the occasional good thinking. She documented it all. One morning, he opened a lecture by saying, "Let's simplify today's lesson. I know some of us are still catching up." His eyes didn't need to move. Everyone knew who the sum of us was meant for. In the cafeteria, things were no better. Alea sat alone by choice. But that didn't protect her from whispers. One afternoon, a note was slipped onto her tray. "You don't have to be a genius to be liked." No signature, no need. By the second week, she'd stopped responding in class unless directly called on. And even then, her answers were clinical, stripped of enthusiasm. She wasn't hiding her intelligence. She was containing it. Not because she doubted it, but because she now understood what it cost. Mr. Calhoun once handed back graded assignments and paused at her desk. "Nice improvement," he said, voice loud enough for others to hear. "I knew if you put in extra effort you'd catch up." The paper said. That night, she stayed up until 1 a.m., cataloging all 2 weeks of incidents in the notebook. Every entry was dated, described in detail, and cross-referenced with the syllabus. She added a quote at the bottom of one page. "Bias doesn't always wear a hood. Sometimes it wears a lab coat." But her resistance was not without toll. Her mother noticed the silence at dinner, the extra hours locked in her room. Her father, usually quiet, asked if everything was all right. Alea nodded, but her eyes were hollow. Then came the Friday quiz. Unlike previous quizzes, which were based on covered material, this one was built around questions 2 chapters ahead. When students groaned in protest, Calhoun smirked and said, "Consider it a challenge. That's what separates real thinkers from the rest." Alea finished it in half the time. She didn't rush. She just knew. She handed it in, and Calhoun glanced at her paper. "Let's hope the confidence matches the results." Monday morning he passed the graded quizzes back. Alea's had no score. Only a note. "See me after class." She stayed seated while the others filtered out. He stood behind his desk, arms folded. "Alea," he began, "your answers are almost too good. No errors. Impressive. Maybe too impressive." She said nothing. "Where did you study this material?" "I read ahead," she replied evenly. "And who helped you?" "No one." He nodded slowly, lips pressed together. Well, I'll be confirming that. She left without another word, but her hands trembled as she clutched her backpack straps. Not out of fear, but fury. Not only had she done the work, but now she was being accused of fraud because of it. That night, she scanned the quiz into her laptop and uploaded it into a hidden folder she'd titled Fall Evidence. The very notebook Calhoun dismissed would become her weapon. But not before he engineered a public ambush designed to break her completely. He gave her a test he thought she'd fail. What she did next stunned the whole class. It was the third Friday of the semester, usually a day for winding down. But as soon as Alea walked into room 203, she knew something was off. Mr. Calhoun stood by the whiteboard, arms crossed, not holding the usual clipboard. Instead, a stack of stapled papers rested on his desk. His expression wasn't smug. It was expectant, calculated, the kind of look someone wears before lighting a match in a room filled with gasoline. Put everything away, he said without greeting. Books, notes, phones. Today we're having a pop quiz. The groan from the class was instant and unified. Unannounced, someone murmured. Calhoun raised a hand. It's time to separate those who've been coasting from those who are serious about physics. You say you're advanced students. Let's see it. He moved through the rows, dropping the quizzes face down. When Alea's landed in front of her, she caught a flash of the first question. Her stomach tightened. It was a problem involving Schwarzschild radius and gravitational collapse, graduate-level content, far beyond what they'd covered. She glanced at the second question. It asked for the derivation of escape velocity for a hypothetical black hole with a rotating mass. None of this had been in the curriculum. Not even hinted at. Alea looked up. Mr. Calhoun stood at the front of the room, hands in his pockets, watching her. She saw it in his eyes. This wasn't just a test. It was a trap. But she refused to blink. She flipped her paper, took a breath, and began writing. The class buzzed with anxiety. Students were whispering, sighing, chewing pencils. A few left answers blank. Alea's pencil moved steadily. She wasn't confident about every equation, but she recognized patterns, remembered long nights reading her father's astrophysics journals. Her mind pulled references from memory, like files from a library shelf. 35 minutes later, she walked to the front and handed in her quiz. Done? Calhoun asked. Yes, she replied. He took the paper, gave it a quick scan, then placed it at the bottom of the pile without comment. The bell rang 10 minutes later. Alea left without a word, her face unreadable. The following Monday, tension awaited her like a fog. As she walked into class, heads turned. Some students looked curious, others indifferent. A few avoided her gaze altogether. Calhoun stood with the stack of graded quizzes. His smile was thin. Jason 42%, Madison 38%, Trevor 55%. He paused dramatically. Whispers swirled. Alea didn't react. She waited, hands folded, posture perfect. When the bell rang, she remained seated. Mr. Calhoun closed the door. Let's have a chat, he said, pulling a chair next to his desk. You're a smart girl. That's clear. She said nothing. But this, he said, holding up her quiz, isn't just smart. It's extraordinary. Too extraordinary, really. For someone at your level. Alea's voice was steady. I read ahead. I've studied this before. With effort and independent study. He leaned back, eyes narrowing. Look, I'm not accusing you. Not yet. But if someone did help you, say your father, you'd want to be honest. Alea's jaw clenched. My father hasn't touched this material in years. Right, he nodded. Still, we both know this kind of work raises questions. So, I'll be verifying it. She rose. I'd like to walk you through my process. He waved her off. No need. But I can explain the logic behind. I said no need. He snapped. There was no more discussion. That evening, Alea sat at the dinner table in silence. Her plate sat untouched. Her mother watched her for a moment. You okay? I'm fine. Her father glanced up. School? Alea hesitated. Then, quietly, he thinks I cheated. On a quiz. Silence. Did you? Her father asked, though not accusingly. She met his eyes. No. I killed it. He nodded slowly. Then make sure next time, you build something that makes them wish they'd believed you the first time. Alea went to the garage that night. The old workbench was cluttered with tools and scrap electronics from her father's early NASA projects. She pulled out her notebook, flipped to the quiz date, and began sketching. She wasn't just going to prove she understood gravitational theory. She was going to demonstrate it in real time. No more waiting for credit. No more quietly playing defense. This time, she'd go on the offense with science. As wires sparked and circuits buzzed under her fingertips, Alea began building a prototype, one that would force the class and Mr. Calhoun to confront the genius they tried to discredit. In front of her peers, he used the whiteboard like a weapon. The next week unfolded under the heavy hum of anticipation. The pop quiz had changed the air in room 23. Students had seen Mr. Calhoun's sharp glances at Alea, the quiet tension that followed whenever she entered. No one said anything aloud, but everyone felt it, the invisible line drawn between the teacher and the girl who had dared to be too smart. It was Wednesday when the lab experiment began. The assignment, measuring magnetic flux through variable coils, using precise field sensors. Simple in theory, tedious in practice. Groups formed instinctively, friends with friends, lab partners choosing comfort over challenge. When Calhoun began calling names to balance the numbers, he hesitated briefly before pairing Alea. "Henderson," he said, scanning his sheet. "You'll work with." He paused, then smirked faintly. The Carson group. 3 boys turned from their workstation. The same group who had laughed behind her during last week's quiz. Their smiles didn't reach their eyes. "Sure," one of them said. "We'll take her." Alea carried her notebook to their table, ignoring the smirks. She looked at the setup: copper coils, a current generator, voltmeters scattered like toys, and immediately noticed the readings were inconsistent. The wiring polarity was reversed. She adjusted the connections quietly. What are you doing?" one of the boys asked, half grinning. "We already had it set." "It's backward," she said. "The readings are inverted. Your field strength will come out negative." "Negative means it's working," he said, laughing. Before she could reply, Calhoun's voice rang out across the lab. "Henderson," he said, "is there a problem?" All eyes turned toward them. Alea straightened. The circuits wired in reverse. The current should flow clockwise through the coil, not counter. Calhoun walked over, arms folded. "Are you suggesting my instructions were unclear?" "No," she replied carefully. "Just that the lab sheet shows the wrong direction for the field alignment." He turned toward the class. "Everyone, gather around. Let's have a look at what Miss Henderson thinks she's discovered." The room went quiet. Chairs scraped as students drifted closer. Alea's heart thudded, but she didn't move. Calhoun took a marker and approached the whiteboard. "All right, Henderson, since you're confident, why don't you show us what you believe is wrong?" Her hand trembled slightly as she accepted the marker. She drew the coil, the flow of current, the direction of the magnetic field, labeling each with careful precision. Her explanation was calm, almost clinical, each word measured. When she stepped back, Calhoun smiled tightly. "Interesting. So you're saying the field points this way?" "Yes." He nodded, tapping his marker against the board. "So according to you, the flux equation should yield a positive result, correct?" "Yes, if the direction is corrected." He turned to the class. "And what if I told you that's not what the textbook says?" Murmurs rose. He flipped open the reference text and pointed at a diagram. "See here, current flows counterclockwise, meaning Ms. Henderson's entire premise is backward." The boys behind her snickered. "Told you." Alea's pulse quickened. "That diagram is for a loop viewed from the opposite axis," she said quietly. "The orientation is reversed, depending on your frame of reference." Calhoun's tone sharpened. "So now you're correcting the textbook too?" "I'm clarifying it." The class laughed softly. He took the marker from her hand and erased her diagram in one hard swipe. "Class, this is why precision matters. Science isn't about feelings. It's about accuracy." Some students confused confidence with understanding. The laughter grew louder now. Her throat tightened, but she stood still, forcing her breathing to stay even. "Take your seat," he said coldly. She walked back to her table, the sound of whispers trailing behind her. One of the boys whispered, "Quantum Queen got schooled." Another added, "Maybe she should stick to social studies." Calhoun didn't stop them. By the end of class, her lab report was flawless, just like her equation, but he gave her an 85%, scribbled in red ink across the top. "Good effort. Watch conceptual consistency." That night, at dinner, her silence was deafening. Her mother asked softly, "Rough day?" Alea shrugged. "He humiliated me. In front of everyone." Her father set down his fork. The quiet that followed carried weight. "What did you say?" he asked. "Nothing. I just corrected him. He made it a show. He studied her face. Did he ever admit you were right? She shook her head. Her father leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. He won't. People like that build their confidence on someone else's doubt. The moment you show you don't need their approval, they crumble. She looked up. Then how do I fight that? Not by yelling, he said. You fight arrogance with brilliance and time. He rose, went to the old bookcase, and returned with a faded engineering manual, its corners worn smooth. This was my reference in flight propulsion testing, he said. Inside, there's a chapter on induced magnetic fields. Read it. You'll find the proof you need. She took it gently, turning the yellowed pages. The diagrams were precise, elegant, and familiar. One sketch, an annotated magnetic loop, mirrored the same correction she'd written on Calhoun's board. Her father smiled faintly. See? The universe has a way of validating truth. Just not always on time. That night, Alea didn't cry. She didn't write in her notebook, either. She reread the engineering text, memorizing every formula, every principle. When she reached the section on electromagnetic induction, something clicked. A connection between what she'd built in the garage and what she could show. A thought took shape. Not just about physics, but about power. If he wanted a public stage, she would give him one. Only this time, the outcome would belong entirely to her. As she fell asleep with the engineering book open beside her, Alea already knew what her next presentation would be, and it would make her impossible to ignore. She turned a simple class project into a scientific masterclass. By Monday morning, room 203 didn't feel like a classroom. It felt like a stage. Mr. Calhoun had assigned each student a 5-minute presentation on electromagnetic fields, with one requirement: make it memorable. Alea didn't need the reminder. Over the weekend, she'd spent 12 hours in the garage, soldering copper coils, testing insulation, calibrating distances. Her father helped when asked, but only with wiring safety. The design, equations, structure, every inch was hers. She wasn't just presenting science, she was performing proof. The moment the bell rang, Calhoun addressed the class. We'll begin alphabetically, he announced, eyes darting to Alea's desk with almost theatrical indifference. Henderson, you're up first. Of course. She stood calmly, rolled her cart carefully concealed under a black sheet into position beside the board. Murmurs rose. A presentation with props was already a curveball. Alea pulled off the sheet. Underneath stood a compact, humming machine. A handcrafted mini Tesla coil, perfectly wound, mounted on a plexiglass base, with copper leads and a wireless circuit. It glowed softly, harmless but alive. Half the class gasped. She didn't look at them. She looked at the board. Today, she began, her voice clear and controlled. I'm demonstrating the principles of electromagnetic induction, Faraday's law, and the creation of a non-contact current loop, through alternating magnetic fields. She paused. In short, we're talking about electricity, moving without wires. She reached into her backpack, removed a small fluorescent tube, and held it near the coil. The room dimmed slightly as she flipped the switch. The tube lit up instantly. Dead silence. Eyes widened. One student whispered, "Yo, what?" Alea kept going. She moved to the board, writing her derivation, from Maxwell's equations to induced electromotive force. Her handwriting was crisp, her pace deliberate. This coil operates at 1.2 megahertz, she explained. The energy is transferred through oscillating fields, creating a potential difference, strong enough to illuminate a non-connected tube. This effect was predicted in 1891 by Nikola Tesla. I replicated it using modular physics and electromagnetic harmonics. Even the students who hadn't cared about science before were locked in. Mr. Calhoun stood frozen at his desk. When she finished her equations, she turned to face the class. And this, she said softly, is what happens when a student is allowed to explore instead of defend herself. No one moved. No one spoke. Until Calhoun clapped once. Then again. Slow. Mocking. Impressive theatrics, he said. Really quite the show. Though I'm curious, how much of that was guided? Alea blinked once. Excuse me? He leaned forward. It's hard to believe a high school junior built that. Especially one without access to university equipment. Who helped you? The room tensed. No one helped, Alea said. I documented every step. He raised his brows. You expect me to believe that? Instead of arguing, she reached into her backpack and pulled out a thick black notebook. Worn at the edges, it looked more like a research journal than a school diary. She handed it to him. Dates, diagrams, failed models, calculations, every line in my own handwriting. Calhoun flipped through it, silent. His eyes scanned page after page of precision, progression, real-time learning. He closed it slowly. Still, he wasn't satisfied. This is convenient, he said, louder now. Almost too convenient. He turned to the class. If she's this advanced, let's raise the bar. Let's see if she can solve something real. Alea stared at him. On the board, he said, already writing. Let's go beyond magnetic fields. Let's talk orbital mechanics. He scribbled a massive equation, a 5-step variable model, requiring knowledge of elliptical orbits, mass ratios, and thrust decay under lunar gravity. It was the kind of problem undergraduates might struggle to solve with calculators. He stepped back, marker in hand. Prove this, he said. In front of everyone. A few students shifted uncomfortably. Alea walked forward slowly, her face unreadable. She took the marker, and instead of beginning, she asked a single question. Is the satellite circular or elliptical in orbit? Calhoun hesitated. What difference does that make? Alea turned to the class. That answer tells me everything I need to know about his understanding of the problem. There was a brief silence, then a single snort of laughter from the back. Calhoun's face hardened. You're avoiding the question. No, she said. I'm exposing the flaw in it. She handed the marker back. I'll solve it. But not now. Not on a board. I'll model it. At home. And when I do, I'll return with not just the answer, but proof that this entire problem is based on an outdated assumption. The room was breathless now. She packed her coil, picked up her notebook, turned to the door. Don't bother, Calhoun said quickly. You'll need my approval to continue in this class. She stopped at the door. I've never needed your approval, she said quietly. Only your attention. And then she walked out, left standing in front of a silent classroom. Calhoun didn't know it yet, but the problem he wrote on that board would come back to haunt him in ways even he couldn't calculate. He crafted a problem no student could solve, except she did. The moment Alea walked into room 23 the next morning, she felt eyes were already on her. Some curious, some resentful, a few quietly impressed. No one spoke, but the air was charged, like the static before a thunderstorm. Her Tesla coil demonstration had gone viral inside the school. Videos filmed on shaky phones were being whispered about in hallways, passed around on private group chats. But the buzz wasn't about science. It was about defiance, about how a black girl stood at the front of the room and corrected the teacher in real time. And Mr. Calhoun had heard every whisper. He stood at the front of the class, arms crossed, watching her take her seat. His smile was thin, his eyes sharper than usual, like a man who'd been waiting all night to get the last word. Before we begin, he said, holding up a folded sheet of paper, I want to revisit yesterday's discussion. Henderson challenged an orbital mechanics scenario I gave her, said she'd model it and prove it flawed. The room was still. Alea didn't flinch. So I've adjusted the problem, he continued, unfolding the page. This one pulls from multiple disciplines: thermodynamics, rotational dynamics, and gravitational decay. He pinned the sheet to the board. This is an open challenge, he said. No calculators, no group work, 1 week to solve. Any student who submits a viable solution gets 10 points added to their final grade. A few heads turned toward Alea, but his next words hit like a backhand. Unless no one's brave enough to try. Alea raised her hand. I'll take it, she said. Are you sure? Calhoun asked, tone clipped. This one's not designed for underachievers. She nodded once. He handed her a printed copy. She scanned it with quick analytical eyes. A satellite, modeled under elliptical orbit, experiencing thermal thrust decay, while simultaneously navigating non-inertial frame drag. It was a monster of a question. At first glance, it looked plausible, dense with formulae, vectors, differential equations, but something about it felt off. I'd like to take it home, she said. Calhoun shrugged. Of course. I doubt anyone else will bother. As she returned to her seat, a hush followed her. That evening, Alea spread the problem across the garage workbench. Her notebook lay open, pen ready. Beside her, her father watched from a distance, not interfering. Just present. She broke the problem into parts. Defined variables, created reference diagrams. The deeper she dug, the more confident she became that the setup was intentionally misleading. There were contradictions embedded between the thermal decay model and the gravitational force field. The assumed rate of decay ignored frame drag entirely, something no real physicist would miss. She pulled out the school-issued physics textbook and flipped to the orbital mechanics section. Page 310. The same assumption, the same flaw. Her pen froze. It wasn't just the question that was wrong. The book itself was wrong. Her eyes narrowed. Mr. Calhoun hadn't just set her up to fail. He'd used a broken tool to do it. She spent the next 4 hours building a corrected version of the problem. New variables, updated assumptions, a simulation she coded herself to test the orbital drift over time. Her father watched quietly, only speaking when she paused. "You found something, didn't you?" "I found everything," she whispered. She closed her notebook and stared at the board she'd filled with equations. "He was counting on me to miss the lie," she said. "But now I can show everyone it was never a real question." Her father stood behind her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Then don't just solve it," he said. "Destroy the foundation it was built on." By morning her notebook was heavier, filled with models, refutations, and evidence that the school's own materials were flawed. Not only had she solved the problem, she'd written an entirely new one to replace it. Clean, correct, and impossible to ignore. She walked into class, calm as ever. Mr. Calhoun didn't greet her. Instead, he launched directly into the lesson, skipping any mention of the challenge. He seemed irritated, distracted, like a man waiting for something to fall apart. But it hadn't. Midway through the period, Alea raised her hand. "I'd like to respond to the orbital challenge." Calhoun paused. "Already?" She nodded. "Yes. I've completed the math, found a contradiction in the question, and rewritten it using accurate decay models." Some students blinked. A few straightened in their seats. "Present it," Calhoun said, almost daring her. Alea stood, opened her notebook, and walked to the board. What followed was methodical, unshakable. She began by solving the problem as written, showing exactly where the contradictions appeared. She then cited page 318 of the textbook, highlighting the erroneous assumption of constant mass. Then she turned and said, "This assumption violates the principle of conservation of energy in real orbital decay." She wasn't attacking him directly. She didn't need to. The facts did the work. Mr. Calhoun interrupted her mid-equation. "The book has been vetted by national committees. Are you suggesting the curriculum is flawed?" "I'm not suggesting," Alea said, looking him in the eye. "I'm demonstrating." She handed him a printout of her simulation results. He scanned it. His face tightened. The class was silent. Even students who had doubted her now leaned forward, watching him. He looked up, voice lower now. "And you completed all this alone?" "Yes. My father proofread my grammar. Nothing else." He held the paper for a moment longer, then set it down. "No congratulations. No comment." He turned back to the board. "Let's move on," he said. "We're behind." But no one was listening anymore. Every eye was still on Alea. That night, the whiteboard equations she left behind would go viral, forcing the school to confront not just her brilliance, but the broken system trying to bury it. Her comeback didn't just silence him, it exposed a broken system. By the next morning, the hum inside Woodsville High was no longer subtle. Something had changed. It moved through the halls like static through a wire. Tense, invisible, impossible to ignore. Students who rarely spoke to Alea now gave her quiet glances in the hallway. Some nodded. Others looked away. No one said a word, but the silence had new meaning. Alea walked into room 203, like she was entering a courtroom. Her notebook under one arm, a USB drive in her pocket, and the weight of something far heavier on her back. Mr. Calhoun was already there, scribbling on the board. He didn't look up. She took her seat. Her pen was still. Her pulse wasn't. When the bell rang, he turned. "Before we begin," he said with clipped neutrality, "we'll have a short continuation from yesterday." No mention of her name. No acknowledgement of what she'd dismantled just 24 hours ago. But she wasn't waiting to be introduced. "I'd like to present the rest of my findings," Alea said. Not loud. Not asking. Calhoun's jaw tensed. "This isn't a science fair. It's still a classroom." "That means truth matters," she replied calmly. The students leaned forward. Some pulled out their phones. Calhoun motioned to the front. Fine, you have 2 minutes. Alea stood, unhurried. The room quieted in a way that didn't feel normal. This wasn't curiosity anymore. This was anticipation. She plugged her USB into the projector. Her first slide appeared, a revised version of the problem Calhoun had given her. It was neatly formatted, color-coded, annotated. Below it, a caption read, "Corrected model, using frame drag and variable mass decay. Yesterday, I showed how the original problem was built on outdated physics," Alea began. "Today I'm going to show why it matters." She clicked to the next slide. A graph appeared. 3 diverging lines across an orbital decay simulation. This red curve is the school textbook's prediction. The blue one is Calhoun's problem. And this, she pointed to the green line, is reality, modeled using 2020 NASA parameters. A few students leaned forward, whispering. She turned to the board and wrote out the central equation. "If you model this with fixed mass," she said, "you violate conservation of momentum. Which means, from the very first step, you're building a lie." The word hung in the air. A few phones rose. Mr. Calhoun stood slowly. "You've made your point, Miss Henderson. This is bordering on disrespect." Alea didn't back down. "It's not disrespect to correct a mistake," she replied. "It's disrespect to teach it as truth." She clicked again. Her final slide read, "When assumptions fail, the system collapses." Underneath, a citation list that stretched 5 references deep. NASA, MIT OpenCourseWare, peer-reviewed physics journals. She turned to the class. "If we're going to be trained as future scientists, engineers, and thinkers, we can't build our education on outdated or biased foundations. We deserve better." It wasn't just about the question anymore. It was about the system. Mr. Calhoun didn't speak. He couldn't. Not yet. A voice from the back broke the silence. "She's right." Everyone turned. It was Ethan, one of the highest scorers in class, known for staying out of drama. He stood, holding his phone. "I just checked. Her math matches NASA's orbital drift model from last year. I looked it up, word for word." A low ripple passed through the class. Mr. Calhoun's eyes darted to Ethan, then to Alea. His mouth opened, then closed. Another voice. "She even cited her sources. I've never seen anyone do that in high school." Phones kept recording, and then came the twist. A quiet beep echoed through the class. One of the girls up front looked at her phone and whispered, "Oh my God." "What's?" someone asked. She turned her screen around. A short clip of Alea's equation breakdown had just been uploaded. 30 seconds long. Shaky footage, but clear enough. Posted by a student on TikTok. It's already at 20,000 views. Alea froze. She hadn't known anyone recorded yesterday's session. More beeps. More phones out. The clip was spreading in real time. The comment section flooded with reactions. "She just bodied her teacher. Black girl brilliance. This is what happens when you underestimate the right one." Mr. Calhoun's face turned pale. "This class is not a performance space," he snapped. "Then maybe you shouldn't treat it like one," Alea said quietly, gathering her things. She returned to her seat. Phones were still up. Students still watching. But Mr. Calhoun had already lost the room. For the first time, the silence wasn't isolating. It was with her. By the time Alea walked out of room 23, the clip had crossed 100,000 views, and by lunch her inbox was flooded with messages from strangers calling her a genius, and others calling her much worse. The world was watching now. But not all of it was kind. In less than a day she went from student to symbol and target. The numbers moved faster than Alea could comprehend. By fourth period the clip had crossed 300,000 views. By lunch it was trending. By evening it passed 1 million. Black Twitter had found her. Screenshots of her equations were being retweeted with hashtags like Black Girl Genius, Correct Your Teacher, and Alea the Physicist. Side-by-side comparisons of her notebook and Calhoun's flawed problem were posted with captions like, "She didn't just pass, she rewrote the curriculum." Celebrities chimed in. A NASA engineer tweeted, "If this girl doesn't get a full scholarship, the system is even more broken than we thought." Journalists started reaching out. Physics blogs featured her whiteboard. TikTokers recreated her demonstration with voiceovers, calling it the moment every student dreams of. But as the praise grew, so did the venom. By midnight, Alea's school email was flooded with messages. Some called her inspiring. Others told her to go back where she came from. The threats came quickly, masked under fake accounts, cloaked in sarcasm, laced with violence. Stop embarrassing your school. You only got views 'cause you're black. Hope you like attention. You're gonna get the wrong kind soon. She didn't show her parents. Not yet. She didn't want them to worry. But something inside her had already shifted. This wasn't about Calhoun anymore. This was about every student who had ever been told they were too confident, too aggressive, too much when they were just enough. That night, instead of shrinking, she decided to speak. She set up her phone on a stack of textbooks, opened her notebook, and hit record. Hi, she began. My name's Alea Henderson. I'm 16. I like physics. And I'm tired of pretending that belonging in this space is something I have to earn by being quiet. She walked through the equations from the orbital challenge, this time for an online audience. Then she closed the video with a calm but clear promise. This is for the ones who were told to sit down when they stood up to speak truth. I'm not going anywhere. She posted it to YouTube. By morning it had 200. At school, it was chaos. The hallway buzzed louder than ever. Some students high-fived her. Others whispered "teacher's pet" under their breath. A few didn't look at her at all. When she walked into room 230, Calhoun didn't speak. The projector was already on, the lesson written out. He didn't look up, but she felt the cold in the air. Midway through class, the principal stepped in, quietly pulled Mr. Calhoun into the hallway. The door clicked shut. Students started whispering. Alea kept her eyes forward. 10 minutes later, Calhoun returned, lips tight, eyes darker than usual. He resumed teaching like nothing had happened. After school, Alea was called into the counselor's office. Miss Prieto, always kind, always measured, sat behind her desk, fingers laced. I just wanted to check in, she said. Alea nodded. You've been getting a lot of attention, Prieto continued. Not all of it positive. I'm aware. Prieto leaned forward slightly. Administration's concerned about how the school is being portrayed. Alea blinked. Excuse me? The board feels that the video, while technically legal, shows the classroom in a misleading light. Alea tilted her head. A light where a student corrected a mistake? Preto's voice softened. You're incredibly talented, Alea. No one doubts that. But maybe, just for now, we step back a little. Let things settle. There it was. Polite censorship, draped in concern. Alea stood. I'm not stepping back. Before Prieto could respond, she left. That night, her video crossed 500,000 views. She opened a second video with a new title, Why Physics Needs More Black Girls. She spoke about her first school, her transfer, her father's garage. She didn't mention Calhoun by name. She didn't have to. The impact was spreading faster than she could track. Physics teachers from across the country left comments of support. A woman from Atlanta messaged her, My daughter watched your video 4 times. She said you made her believe she could be an engineer. But amidst the celebration, something darker brewed. One night, while reviewing her analytics, Alea noticed something strange. A school IP address had been accessing her YouTube page repeatedly, dozens of times at odd hours. She checked her email. Nothing official from the school. Until the next morning. Her father held the envelope when she walked into the kitchen. From the district, he said. She opened it slowly. Notice of formal review, academic integrity and conduct. Student Alea Henderson. They were investigating her. Not the threats. Not the failure of the curriculum. Her father's expression didn't change, but she saw the storm building behind his eyes. This is retaliation, he said. They're scared, she replied. He nodded. They should be. Unbeknownst to Alea, while she fought to defend her name, the school board had already hired a private investigator. And soon, they'd go after the one place she thought was safe, her father. When they couldn't dismiss her talent, they tried to erase it. The envelope was clean, official, and cold. It sat on the dining table like an unspoken threat. Alea didn't need to read it to understand. Her father, however, insisted on examining every word. He read it once, then again, slower the second time. Her mother stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Notice of formal review. Academic Integrity Board. Her father read aloud. They're not just challenging your quiz, Alea. They're challenging your entire academic record. 3 pages deep, the letter raised concerns over unusual academic growth, inconsistencies in grade history, and the possibility of unauthorized external assistance. They were implying that Alea's achievements were too good to be real. That brilliance coming from her must be dishonest. The next day at school, the walls felt tighter. Her name whispered between lockers. scribbled on desk corners, passed around with speculation wrapped in fake concern. Teachers who once smiled, now nodded stiffly. Her counselor, Miss Prieto, stopped her in the hallway with a tight smile and furrowed brow. Alea, she said softly, we need to be careful. The board is watching closely. They're nervous. This attention, it's not helping your case. My case? Alea said, blinking. I'm not on trial. Miss Prieto exhaled. You know what I mean. Just try to keep a low profile. Alea's eyes narrowed. Did you tell Mr. Calhoun to do the same? The counselor didn't answer. Within days, she was called into multiple meetings. The assistant principal first, then the district's academic integrity officer. Finally, a quiet sit-down with a woman who didn't give her name, didn't write anything down, and asked all the wrong questions. How did you learn college-level theory? Who's been helping you at home? Do you have access to external learning software? What exactly does your father do? They weren't curious. They were fishing, trying to catch her in a lie that didn't exist. She answered calmly. And when she left, she made sure her voice recorder was still running. Alea began recording everything. Every meeting, every hallway conversation, every moment that smelled like sabotage. Her phone lived in her jacket pocket, voice recorder active, data uploading to a private cloud. She wasn't being paranoid, she was being prepared. And while the school dug through her history, the internet lifted her future. Her YouTube channel exploded. Comments poured in by the second. Students across the country sent videos saying she inspired them. A nonprofit STEM foundation emailed her. They wanted to sponsor a 5-part series featuring her, Physics by Alea. But the louder she became online, the more hostile things got at school. Whispers became accusations. A Facebook group run by local parents posted claims that her father must have built the Tesla coil. A blog accused her of faking her quiz. One post read, "This isn't genius. It's manipulation, and the district is getting played." The school said nothing. No support, no statement. They didn't defend her. They distanced themselves. Then came the most personal blow. Her father received an unexpected request to appear at a district compliance review. When he arrived, administrators questioned him about possible misuse of federal engineering tools, and whether he had contributed to school projects without permission. No documentation, no formal charge, just insinuations and veiled threats. When he came home that night, he was quiet. He poured coffee, sat down at the table. "They're not just targeting you," he said. "They're targeting me now, too." A few days later, during her chemistry class, the intercom buzzed. "Please send Alea Henderson to the main office." When she arrived, 3 people were waiting. The principal, a school board representative, and a legal advisor. Her name was on a folder in front of them. Inside were records, screenshots, timestamps. "We're opening a conduct review," the board member said. Alea tilted her head. "For what?" "For creating a disruptive academic environment," the woman replied. "Several instructors feel your presence is altering classroom dynamics. We've had complaints." "You mean answering questions?" The woman didn't blink. "You've become a distraction." Alea let that sit for a beat. "I'm recording this conversation," she said plainly. The principal shifted in his chair. "We don't consent. You're on school property. One-party consent law. It's legal." A pause. "We'll end this meeting," the board member said. "No problem," Alea replied, standing. "I already have what I need." That night, she didn't post a lesson video. She posted a timeline, a 10-minute breakdown of the entire journey, from the pop quiz to the viral video, from the hallway rumors to the private meetings. She blurred names, kept it factual, but the emotional undercurrent, unmistakable. "I didn't ask for this spotlight," she said, "but since they gave it to me, I'm going to use it." It went viral within hours. CNN Education retweeted it. A black scientist from MIT posted, "Give this girl a lab and a scholarship. She's already ahead of the game." But the school still stayed silent. Then came the final blow. An envelope slid into her mailbox. Plain white. No frills. But inside, intent to expel pending review. The letter cited behavioral inconsistency with school values and continued disruptions. Her mother screamed. Her father didn't. He sat down quietly, staring at the letter. Alea didn't cry. She stood, walked to her desk, and reached for her recorder. "If they want a war," she said, "they just gave me my opening statement." But while the Hendersons prepared their defense, An anonymous tip landed in a journalist's inbox, leaked school board emails, and one message stood out among the rest. We need to make this girl disappear before this goes national. When pushed to the wall, her family pushed back with lawyers. The house had turned into a war room. Stacks of paper covered the dining table, emails, screenshots, printed transcripts, and legal correspondence. Alea's father sat at the center of it all, glasses sliding down his nose, his laptop glowing with exhaustion and determination. Her mother brewed a third pot of coffee, the smell mixing with the heavy quiet that had replaced their dinners. No one talked about school anymore. They talked about evidence. The anonymous email had changed everything. Inside it were scanned internal memos from the district office, messages between board members, legal advisors, and teachers. One line in particular froze them all. We need to neutralize this situation before the media escalates it. Her father read it again and again, his jaw clenching tighter each time. This isn't an investigation, he said finally, voice low and shaking. It's an execution plan. By the next morning, he'd made his first call to a name he hadn't spoken in years. Marcus Reed, civil rights attorney, former college roommate, known for dismantling school districts that weaponized policy against black students. Within 24 hours, Marcus was in their living room, briefcase open, eyes scanning the evidence like a surgeon reading a fatal X-ray. Academic sabotage, he said quietly. They've built a paper trail, designed to collapse under scrutiny, but not before it does damage. Classic playbook. You were never supposed to find those emails. Her father leaned back. We did. Now what? Marcus smiled faintly. Now we take them to court. The federal lawsuit was filed 3 days later. Henderson-Vary-Woodsville School District and staff. The charges: racial discrimination, academic retaliation, and emotional distress. The supporting exhibits: the leaked emails, the false conduct letters, and evidence of administrative bias. By the time the filing hit public record, the story was already viral again. News stations ran the headline, "Black Teen Genius Files Discrimination Suit After Viral Physics Video." Within hours, protesters gathered outside the school gates. Students, parents, activists holding cardboard signs that read, "Let her learn," and "Education is not white property." The district went into full panic. They issued a statement that sounded rehearsed and hollow. Woodsville High prides itself on academic excellence and equal opportunity. Recent allegations are being exaggerated by outside influences. But that same afternoon, a whistleblower, an assistant secretary from the district office, emailed Marcus anonymously with proof that the district had backdated disciplinary documents after the lawsuit was filed. The school had lied. At home, Alea sat in front of the camera again. She didn't cry. She didn't rant. "People think I'm fighting for grades," she said softly. "I'm fighting for the truth. Because if they can erase me for being excellent, then what chance does anyone else have?" Her video trended under the tag "Justice for Alea." Within 2 days, civil rights organizations reached out. The NAACP issued a statement of support. Local news stations parked outside her house. It was chaos. But this time, she wasn't alone. The school's counterattack came fast. Anonymous sources began leaking distorted information to the press. Articles appeared online, claiming her father had used classified data from prior engineering contracts. Others hinted that Alea's success was artificially boosted by social media manipulation. It was defamation disguised as concern. Her father slammed the paper down one evening. "They're not protecting the school. They're protecting a man who's been teaching bias for decades." "He wasn't wrong." Marcus leaned forward. "And now we prove it." The first court hearing was set for a Friday morning. The courthouse buzzed with reporters. Alea wore a navy blazer borrowed from her mother, her notebook in her lap, fingers tracing the worn edges. Her father sat beside her, expression fixed between fury and pride. Marcus stood at the front, legal pad in hand, his voice calm but cutting. He began by reading from the district's own emails, the one that mentioned neutralizing her story, the one suggesting disciplinary alternatives, the one questioning whether certain demographics should be discouraged from STEM advancement. The courtroom was silent except for his voice. Across the aisle, the district's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. When Marcus finished, the judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward. "You have supporting witnesses." Marcus smiled faintly. "Yes, Your Honor, we do." He turned. The courtroom doors opened. A woman stepped in. She was older, late 20s maybe, dressed in a charcoal suit. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned. "State your name," Marcus said. "Danielle Price." she answered. Former student of Woodsville High. Former student of Mr. Calhoun. A low murmur spread through the courtroom. And why are you here today? Marcus asked. She took a slow breath. Because the same thing happened to me, she said. Same teacher. Same accusations. Same pattern. Alea's mother's hand flew to her mouth. Her father went still. Danielle continued. I was accused of cheating my senior year. I was the only black student in advanced physics at the time. I ended up transferring schools. I never finished the class. When I saw Alea's video, I realized he's still doing it. The judge's expression shifted. Something between shock and dawning comprehension. Marcus placed a document on the bench. Your Honor, we've corroborated Danielle Price's transcript. She lost her scholarship after Mr. Calhoun's complaint. The same language appears in her disciplinary notes, as in Alea's. The courtroom murmured louder now. Calhoun, sitting stiffly in the back with the district's counsel, looked pale. He avoided eye contact with everyone. The judge tapped her pen. Mr. Reed, this testimony will be allowed into record. Marcus nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. He turned briefly to Alea, his voice quiet but steady. This isn't just your case anymore. It's a pattern. Alea felt her throat tighten. For the first time, she wasn't just defending herself. She was standing for someone who never got to fight back. Outside the courthouse, the protest had doubled. TV trucks lined the sidewalks. Reporters shouted questions as the Henderson family exited, flanked by Marcus and two interns carrying case files. One reporter called out, Alea, what's next for you? She stopped, facing the cameras directly. What's next? She said, voice strong. Accountability. For every teacher who hid behind policy to keep students like me out. This isn't about me anymore. It's about everyone they tried to erase. Her father put a hand on her shoulder. The crowd cheered, but even as flashes popped and microphones crowded forward, Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. He stepped aside, answered quietly, and froze. When he returned, his expression was grim. What is it? Her father asked. Marcus exhaled. We just got a notification. The district's hired a private firm. They're digging into your personal data, emails, financials, everything. Alea looked up at him. To find what? He shook his head. Anything they can twist into a lie. That night, while the Hendersons tried to rest, an unmarked car parked across from their home. Inside, a camera lens focused through the blinds and clicked. The system wasn't finished with them yet. What began as a single case uncovered years of silent suffering. After Danielle Price testified, something cracked, not just in the courtroom, but across the city. By the following week, emails began trickling in, quiet at first, hesitant, then steadily louder. Some came from private accounts. Others were anonymous Google Docs, typed in bold letters but unsigned. A pattern began forming in Marcus Reed's inbox, and each story felt eerily familiar. I was in Calhoun's class in 2013. Top of the class, but he said I was too impatient to continue in physics. He told my daughter to consider other electives because her math confidence was low. She was the only Latina in AP Chem. They moved me to general science after I missed one lab. I found out later others were allowed to retake it. I was not. One testimony turned to 10. 10 became 30. Marcus printed them all, layering them across his office wall. Names, dates, racial demographics, and class placements. Nearly every complaint came from a black or brown student. Students who had entered advanced STEM tracks only to be quietly pushed out, discouraged, demoted, or outright erased. Alea stood in front of that wall one afternoon, lips slightly parted. These weren't numbers anymore. They were lives. Trajectories that had been quietly derailed. I thought it was just me, she whispered. Her father's jaw clenched. That's the whole game. They isolate you, so you think you're alone. But you're not. You never were. Marcus's team began formal outreach, offering students and families confidentiality in exchange for testimony. The response was overwhelming. One girl from the class of 2016 had dropped out entirely after her college counselor questioned whether she had inflated grades. Her file showed a disciplinary note from Mr. Calhoun, one that never should have been there. Another former student revealed she'd been denied a national merit recommendation despite having the highest GPA in her class. Alea and her legal team compiled everything. One afternoon, Marcus stood before a whiteboard filled with timelines and arrows. This isn't just discrimination, he said. It's a systematic obstruction of black academic mobility. A silence filled the room, heavy and sharp. Alea broke it. "We're going public." Marcus looked at her. "You are already public." "Not like this," she said. "We need to name names. Show faces. This is bigger than my grade. It's a machine." Within 48 hours, Alea released a new video titled, "The Pattern They Didn't Want Us to See." She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. Behind her was a projected timeline of every testimony, each marked with year, subject, and race. "We thought it was coincidence," she said to the camera. "It wasn't. It was design." The video exploded across platforms. Activists reposted it. University professors began circulating it as part of workshops on racial gatekeeping in education. A Chicago-based nonprofit offered legal aid to former students who had lost scholarships. A public petition began circulating, demanding Ms. Calhoun's suspension. Over 250,000 signatures came in within 72 hours. But as the tide shifted in Alea's favor, so did the district's tactics. Instead of silence, they struck back. On a stormy Wednesday morning, the Hendersons received a press release, one not sent to them directly, but leaked to local media. It was titled "District Response to Allegations, Upholding Standards." Inside were cherry-picked quotes from staff defending Mr. Calhoun's rigorous approach to instruction. They praised his high expectations and referred to concerned parents who believed that grade inflation and identity-based exemptions were undermining academic excellence. Worse still, the district leaked a redacted version of Alea's academic file, citing public interest. It showed nothing damning, but the implication was clear: cast doubt, stir questions, seed mistrust. Marcus was furious. "This is illegal," he snapped. "They're weaponizing her transcript." Alea sat quietly, staring at the leaked document. "They want to rewrite my story," she said. Again. That afternoon, the school board held a press conference. Mr. Calhoun wasn't present, but his ghost filled every sentence. Board members insisted they supported all students, that any isolated experiences were being taken seriously, and that Mr. Calhoun's decades of service speak for themselves. But the most jarring part came at the end. A board member stepped forward with a thick folder. "We've initiated an external audit," she announced, "into past academic records of students making claims. If inconsistencies are found, legal action may follow." It wasn't just deflection. It was retaliation. They were threatening the victims. Back at home, Alea stared at her laptop, expression frozen. "They're trying to scare them into silence," she murmured. "All of them." Marcus nodded slowly. "They want to make an example of you." "Then I'll be one," she said. Her father looked up sharply. "Alea." "No," she cut in. "They already tore apart my peace, my reputation. They don't get to take the truth too." That night, she posted again. This time, the video was raw. No background, no graphics, just Alea, sitting at her desk. "You want to audit me? Fine. Start with the board. Start with Calhoun. Start with the system that has silenced black students for decades. I'm not going anywhere." It was less a post and more a declaration of war. Then came the twist. Just before midnight, a message pinged Marcus's encrypted inbox. No subject line, no signature. Attached was a single PDF. It was a scanned disciplinary file, buried deep in the district archive. The name, Mr. Peter Calhoun. The date, the allegation, targeted academic bias against minority students. The resolution, internal warning. No formal discipline. Alea read it twice. So it happened before. Marcus's jaw was locked. They knew. They covered it. They let it happen again. The next morning, Alea and her team prepared to go nuclear. But before they could act, the district announced a surprise witness of their own. A former teacher, willing to testify against Alea, claiming she had been coached and manipulated from the start. When the truth was too strong, they tried to destroy her image instead. It began with a whisper, buried in a gossip forum posing as a concerned parent group. A comment appeared under a thread titled, "Is Alea Henderson the hero we think she is?" It claimed she had a history of classroom disruptions, had once threatened a teacher, and had been disciplined multiple times at her previous school. No proof, no signature, but the seed had been planted. By the next morning, the story spread. A local education blog published an article headlined, "Questions Swirl Around Viral Physics Students' Past." The writer quoted sources close to the school suggesting Alea was more show than substance. They embedded screenshots, blurred disciplinary records, out-of-context snippets from what looked like internal emails. One line stood out. Alea is emotionally unstable and increasingly defiant. She's manipulating the system to serve her narrative. It hit the internet like a spark in a dry forest. Talk shows debated it. Podcasts speculated. Pundits, mostly white, mostly male, discussed whether emotional maturity should factor into academic praise. A professor from a conservative think tank posted, "If she's truly brilliant, she should rise without controversy." The drama undermines her claim. Her YouTube channel, once growing by thousands a day, suddenly flatlined. Then came the flags, copyright violations, false community guideline strikes. 3 videos disappeared within 24 hours. Her live stream ability was temporarily restricted. Her sponsors, those that had cheered her rise, began to ghost her. An email from one read, "In light of emerging concerns, we're pausing our engagement until clarity is restored." Inside her bedroom, Alea stared at her laptop screen, her fingers trembling over the keyboard. She hadn't cried. Not yet. But the betrayal cut deeper than she expected. "Mom," she said quietly, "they're deleting me." Her mother rushed to her side, reading over her shoulder. "These are lies. All of it. They're making me the problem," Alea whispered. "They can't argue with my science. So now it's about my personality, my tone, my history." Her father stormed in, holding a printed copy of the leaked disciplinary record. "This isn't even her file," he growled. "Look at the student ID. It's off by 2 digits. They modified someone else's record to look like hers." Alea's mother gasped. "That's criminal. And traceable," he said. "We'll prove it." The next night, Alea broke her silence. She couldn't live stream, so she pre-recorded a new video, simply titled, "Receipts." It opened on her face, calm, exhausted, and blazing with clarity. "Some people are trying to rewrite my story. So let's clear the air." She held up 2 files. One was the district's leaked record. The other, her real one, pulled directly from the state student portal. She laid them side by side. Different ID, different timestamps, different font. "This," she said, lifting the forged file, "isn't just a lie. It's an illegal forgery distributed by someone inside the system." She then opened her email inbox. She scrolled through dozens of anonymous threats sent to her sponsors, some filled with slurs, others with doctored screenshots claiming she had plagiarized her Tesla coil design. "I built this with my hands," she said. "With my father, in our garage. You want to erase me? You'll need to erase every notebook I've filled since I was 9 years old." She held up her battered black notebook, flipped to the page labeled, "Tesla Prototype Draft 1, dated July." A timestamp, a signature, a paper trail. "I'm not your myth," she said. "I'm your mirror, and you're scared of your own reflection." The video exploded. 1 million views in a day.
News outlets reversed their headlines.
Verified experts came forward, slamming the forgery. One professor posted, "If this student were white, we'd be calling her the future of aerospace. Instead, we're watching them try to bury her brilliance under fake paperwork." The backlash against the smear campaign was swift. Protesters returned, this time with signs that read, "You can't fail us into silence. Black excellence isn't a threat. We are not the distraction, we are the standard." Even major sponsors issued apologies. A national tutoring platform offered her a brand partnership with complete editorial control. Another organization offered to fund her college tuition in full. But even as her image was rebuilt, the war wasn't over. One morning, Marcus called her family into his office. He looked more serious than usual. "No notes. No laptop." "There's been a development," he said. Alea leaned forward. "More lies?" He shook his head. "The opposite. We've been granted a federal subpoena." "For what?" her father asked. "For Mr. Calhoun." A beat of silence passed. "The judge has ordered him to testify, under oath, about everything. Your grades, the quiz, the fabricated challenge question, the district's communication, and the leaked documents." Alea blinked slowly. "He has to speak?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "And he can't lie, not without perjuring himself." Alea sat back, letting that settle. She'd waited months for this moment. But it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. It felt like the last move before the board flipped. But just as her family prepared for the courtroom showdown, they received a notice. Mr. Calhoun had suddenly taken a medical leave of absence, and the district was petitioning to delay his testimony indefinitely, in front of cameras. Under oath, he couldn't lie his way out this time. It was the most watched local broadcast in the region's history. Courtroom seats filled hours before the hearing began. Reporters squeezed into benches, camera crews adjusted tripods, and every major news network streamed live from the hallway. The trial that started as a quiet discrimination suit had become a national moment, a collision of race, education, and power. In the front row sat Alea, poised in a charcoal blazer, her father on one side, Marcus on the other. Her mother clutched a folded tissue but hadn't cried. Not today. Today they would hear him speak. At 10:04 a.m., Mr. Peter Calhoun walked in. He looked thinner. His eyes were puffy, suit too tight. He wore the calm of a man coached by legal advisors. But under the surface, the tension radiated like heat. He took the stand. The judge's voice cut clean across the room. Mr. Calhoun, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do, he answered. And then the mask began to crack. Marcus approached slowly, every movement calculated. Mr. Calhoun, he began. How long have you taught advanced physics at Woodsville High? 21 years. In that time, how many black female students have enrolled in your AP physics course? Calhoun blinked. I don't have that number offhand.
Would you say more than 5?
A pause. No, Calhoun admitted. More than 3. He hesitated. Maybe 2. And how many of them passed with an A? Silence. The courtroom was breathless. I can't recall, Calhoun said. Let me help you, Marcus replied. We found only one. Alea Henderson. Calhoun's eyes flicked toward her. Just for a second. Marcus leaned forward. Do you recall giving her a quiz that was not part of the course material? Yes. Why? I wanted to challenge her. She seemed confident. Confident, Marcus repeated. Is that usually a reason to test students beyond curriculum? I had concerns she was being overly assertive. Marcus's voice dropped. Do you consider assertiveness a flaw? Calhoun shifted. Not in general, but in her case it disrupted class dynamics. In what way? She questioned me. Publicly. Often. Marcus raised his eyebrows. In questioning your instruction, something students are taught to do, was disruptive. Excessively so, yes. The coded language had started. Marcus let the silence simmer, then pulled out a stack of papers. These are emails between you and the district board, dated 2 weeks before Alea's quiz. One says, we may need to quietly reposition this student. She's becoming difficult to contain academically. Calhoun's eyes widened. I didn't write that. No, Marcus replied, lifting a second page. But you responded. Understood. I'll introduce a barrier assessment next week. The courtroom murmured. Is that barrier assessment the quiz you gave Alea? Marcus asked. Calhoun's voice dropped. Yes. So to be clear, you coordinated with the board to invent a test to derail a student's trajectory. No, Calhoun stammered. I didn't say that. You literally just did, Marcus snapped. The judge banged her gavel. Order. The cross-examination continued like surgical dissection. Marcus produced another email, this one referencing Danielle Price, another former student, Calhoun discouraged from applying to engineering school. He denied memory. Marcus played a voicemail Danielle had left the administration, dated 2016, begging for a transfer. Then came the final blow. A confidential board memo leaked the previous week. In it, Calhoun was listed as a trusted gatekeeper for academic sorting tasked with ensuring academic integrity and advanced placement demographics. Marcus read it aloud. In plain terms, he said, you were the gatekeeper to keep black students out. Calhoun stuttered. That's not what I understood. But that's what you did, Marcus said. The cameras caught everything. When it ended, Calhoun's shoulders slumped. His answers had turned to stammering denials and shallow justifications. The courtroom felt heavy, like a chapter was closing not just for Alea, but for everyone who had ever sat in a classroom, wondering why their name never made the honors list. Outside, protest signs filled the street. We are not disruptions. Education shouldn't have a gatekeeper. Black brilliance needs no permission. News anchors ran split-screen analysis. Twitter exploded with the phrase, he called her assertive. She called him out. But as Alea left the courtroom, something unexpected happened. The judge called both legal teams forward. I've received a packet this morning, she said, voice low. It was submitted through federal subpoena and sealed until now. It contains confidential communications between the district and third-party consultants, hired to monitor Alea's online presence. as well as internal risk assessments regarding potential media fallout. She tapped the folder. I need a week to review them. These documents may affect not only the current ruling, but broader legal implications. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Implications for who? The judge didn't answer. Court is adjourned until next Friday. Alea stepped outside into a sea of flashing lights, chanting crowds, and reporters hurling questions. But she didn't speak. Not yet, because she knew the next 7 days would decide everything. At home that night, Marcus opened the sealed documents the judge had received. Inside, buried in a series of legal briefings, was a spreadsheet. Its title, At-Risk Students to Monitor, 2000. Alea's name was on it. So were 27 others, all black. The world waited for justice, and what came next sparked a movement. The air inside the courtroom was electric, yet brittle. Each person seated, standing, even leaning against a wall seemed to know instinctively that history was about to be made in real time. Phones were off, pens hovered over notepads. Alea sat unmoving, her spine straight as steel, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't blink as the judge adjusted her glasses and began to read. This court finds by a preponderance of evidence that the Woodsville School District engaged in systemic racial discrimination and academic retaliation in violation of federal education law and constitutional protections. Each word felt like thunder, soft but undeniable. Alea's throat clenched, her lungs remembering to exhale only after the sentence concluded. Her mother gently pressed a hand to her back. Her father remained motionless, his jaw locked. They had won. The gavel's final bang echoed like a closing door on an old era. A silence settled for a second, before the realization fully landed on the crowd. Then it erupted. Outside the building, cheers roared through megaphones. Reporters bolted for the steps. The crowd, once scattered and doubtful, was now united and deafening. Alea's name was on every sign, her face in every camera flash. The ruling didn't just confirm her truth. It dismantled theirs. Mr. Calhoun was suspended from teaching indefinitely pending a broader state-level investigation. The school district was ordered to pay damages to the Henderson family for emotional distress and educational sabotage, and required to implement diversity oversight and third-party audits for their STEM placement criteria. It was more than symbolic. It was systemic correction, legally enforced. In the press conference that followed, Marcus took the mic first, his voice calm, firm, and deliberate.
This is more than a legal win. This is a loud, permanent record against those who use bureaucracy as a mask for bias. This judgment is a flag planted in the name of every student who's ever been told they were too much, too fast, too loud when all they were was brilliant.
Alea's father stood next. His voice cracked just once. I taught my daughter to build, to question, to be precise. They tried to dismantle her with suspicion. They underestimated her, because they never bothered to understand her. Let this be the last time. And finally, the girl who once sat silently in the back of a hostile classroom stepped forward. Alea adjusted the mic once. She wasn't nervous. She was done being small. I didn't fight this hard just to get a grade back, she said, voice calm and even. I fought because being right shouldn't require a court order. She held up the same black notebook she carried through every class, trial, and testimony. The pages were crinkled, corners worn down from flipping, but still intact. I was told to stay in my lane. I made my own road. Behind her, the crowd erupted. The video of her speech reached 5 million views in 48 hours. It became a teaching tool, a rallying cry, a viral campaign. Let Her Shine trended on every platform. Celebrities reposted it. Scientists, engineers, and astronauts weighed in, with stories of their own uphill climbs through bias-cloaked systems. One tweet from a former NASA physicist read, "If Alea had been my student, I'd have handed her my lab keys." More than applause followed. A full-ride offer arrived from Stanford, then another from Caltech. MIT invited her for an honorary tour. Even NASA sent a message, offering a mentorship connection with their Women in Aerospace program. But Alea didn't answer right away. Not because she was unsure, but because something else had begun to take shape. Marcus, sensing the moment, helped her establish the Quiet Genius Project, a national mentorship and advocacy platform for Black and Brown students in STEM. The project collected testimonies from students around the country, offered direct guidance from professionals, and provided templates for students to document and defend their academic work, just as Alea had been forced to do. The first month brought a grant from the American Education Equity Coalition arrived, then another, Within weeks, they opened satellite programs in Chicago, Atlanta, and Detroit. Each new location brought more stories, more erased names finally being written back into history. But not everyone cheered. Some officials remained silent. Others grumbled in private. Anonymous blog posts resurfaced, warning that reverse discrimination and emotionalized STEM were undermining rigor. Conservative radio shows called her the face of victim culture. One podcast declared, "The girl didn't win a science fair. She broke a school." Alea read the comments, all of them, and then she logged off and got back to work. Until one night, when a single email cracked through her new confidence like a rock through glass. She was responding to a 10-year-old in Louisiana who had messaged her asking how to build an electromagnet. She was smiling, typing instructions step by step, when a ping appeared on her screen. Subject: application status. Immediate attention required. From Eastern Technical University admissions. She clicked it, expecting good news. Instead, she read, "Dear Ms. Henderson, we appreciate your application and ongoing interest in Eastern Technical University. Due to recent developments, we have placed your application under extended review. This is not a denial, but we are unable to proceed with a final decision at this time. You may not appeal. Further updates will be sent in the coming weeks." Her chest tightened. There was no explanation, no clarity, just vague language and the unmistakable scent of academic retaliation wrapped in professionalism. She read it again. Developments. Extended review. No appeal. It wasn't a no, but it wasn't a yes either. And worse, it was intentional. She stared at the screen, then at the wall, then at herself. Was this what her victory had earned? Another invisible gatekeeper? A quieter rejection dressed as delay? Her mother entered the room. "What is it?" Alea turned the laptop toward her. "They're stalling." Her mother read the email slowly, then pressed her lips together. "They want to punish you." Quietly, without fingerprints. Her father appeared in the doorway, catching the last few words. "I'll contact Marcus," he said without hesitation. But even before the legal team responded, something else arrived. An anonymous message from a student at Eastern Technical. A screenshot. An internal faculty thread. At the top of the email chain was a sentence from the assistant dean: "Her presence would be complicated. Perhaps a deferment will quiet the noise." Alea stared at the screen for a long time. And then she opened a new tab. Not to write another video, not to plead, but to build. In the early hours of the morning, Alea launched a new initiative. This time not for students but to hold universities accountable. Its name was simple, sharp, and impossible to ignore. STEM Watchdog. And within minutes, the first anonymous faculty whistleblower asked to speak. What started as a classroom insult became the birth of a revolution. Eastern Technical thought their silence would hold. They believed that if they delayed just long enough, if they waited for the outrage to fade, Alea would quietly accept the deferral, retreat into obscurity, and stop making noise. But they hadn't learned the most basic truth about her. Alea Henderson didn't vanish. She amplified. 3 days after receiving the email, Alea walked into a scheduled meeting with Eastern Technical's admissions board. Her father, Marcus, and 2 local journalists by her side. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even need her note. She simply read the internal faculty email they thought would remain buried. Her presence would be complicated. The room fell silent. "This isn't just about me," Alea said. "It's about every brilliant student who's ever been seen as a threat instead of a gift. If your campus can't handle that, it's not worth attending." She didn't wait for applause. She walked out, and by the time she reached the street, the board had voted to admit her. The reversal made headlines. Eastern Tech backs down after public pressure. Student who fought back against STEM racism wins again. From discrimination to destiny, Alea Henderson accepted with full honors. Alea declined the full press tour. She gave one interview to a young black journalist from an independent blog. Then she posted a single message to her followers. "We don't wait for doors anymore. We build the foundation." The tweet alone got over 3 million likes. But her work wasn't finished. Not even close. Later that month, Alea stood under bright lights, facing a global audience. It was her first TED Talk, titled "Proof of Brilliance, the Formula They Fear." She didn't use slides. She didn't need spectacle. She used her story, from the insult disguised as a pop quiz, to the viral video, to the lawsuit, to the students erased by systemic suspicion. She detailed the trauma, but also the transformation. How racism in education didn't just deny opportunity, it rewrote futures. And when she spoke about Mr. Calhoun's phrase, too confident to be teachable, the entire audience went silent. Confidence in black students is often mistaken for arrogance, she said. Curiosity mistaken for rebellion. Genius mistaken for defiance. We don't just need new curricula, we need new eyes. The video was viewed 12 million times in 1 week. Offers flooded in, fellowships, board seats, brand deals. She accepted only one, a partnership with a nonprofit to launch the Horizon Fund, a scholarship exclusively for underrepresented students pursuing physics and engineering. Within 6 months, 30 students across the country had received full tuition. Her YouTube channel crossed 1 million subscribers. But it wasn't just science now, it was strategy, empowerment, breakdowns of how to survive hostile classrooms, and still succeed. She shared methods for documenting bias, talking to school boards, and using policy as protection. She was no longer just a student. She was a movement. Then came the twist no one expected. Woodsville High, the very school that once tried to expel her, sent an official letter. It began with an apology, then an invitation. They wanted to rename their advanced STEM enrichment program, the Elia Henderson Initiative. The letter read, "Your courage has redefined our understanding of academic equity. We want future students to know your name, not because of controversy, but because of your clarity." Alea didn't accept immediately. She visited the school first, walked through the halls, the same ones where her ideas were once ignored, where laughter followed her answers, where her notebook was the only safe place she had. The lab still had her formula on the board, half erased but visible. This time she didn't feel small. She stood at the whiteboard, uncapped a marker, and wrote under her old equation. Never underestimate quiet fire. She turned, walked out, and gave her answer. Yes. On the day of the dedication, she stood in front of a packed gymnasium, now filled with new faces, hopeful ones. The principal, newly appointed, promised structural change, diversity hiring, an ethics committee. But the loudest moment was when one student stepped forward. A black girl, maybe 14, with a binder in her hand. She handed it to Alea. "I wanted to show you my notes," she whispered. Alea opened the binder and smiled. Pages and pages of equations, questions, dream sketches, just like hers. "I'm going to build something that flies to Saturn," the girl added shyly. "I believe you will," Alea replied, handing the binder back. She left the gym, her heart full but her mind racing. The movement had grown beyond her, and that meant the responsibility had grown too. She boarded a flight to California for her campus orientation. Eastern Technical, now humbled, now prepared. And as she walked through the gates on her first official day, her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A message from unknown. Subject: urgent help. "Hi Alea. I saw your videos. I'm a junior at Clark High in Texas. They won't let me take AP Calculus because they said it's too hard for someone like me. I think they mean someone who looks like me. I don't know what to do." Alea stopped walking. She closed her eyes. Then she smiled. She hit reply. "Tell me everything. We're not done yet." As Alea sent her response, a new tab opened on her laptop. She began outlining a digital toolkit for students, templates, legal rights, documentation guides, designed to expose discrimination and elevate genius. The next battle had already begun, and now there were hundreds of Aleas. If you've ever been told to stay quiet when you knew you were right, if you've ever watched someone brilliant be broken just to protect someone else's ego, then you know this isn't just Alea's story, it's ours. Type yes if you believe every student deserves to be seen. Subscribe if this broke your heart, but lit a fire inside you.